again, my friends. I'm Lori Ashcraft. I'm your host today for Viva la Evolution, which is sponsored by Recovery and Resilience Solution, which is a training and consulting branch of Crestwood Behavioral Health. And we're just pleased to see you again. I'm especially pleased. And today, kind of promised this to you last week, but today we're going to talk about what we call tools, which are really, just so we're clear, when I say tool, it's usually a form or a procedure that we use that helps people stay on track with the recovery process. Probably all had an experience of going to trainings, going to a workshop, learning a bunch of new stuff about how to do recovery and resilience work. And then you come back and you have to fill out forms about people that take you down a whole different path. They're usually all pretty much focused on medical things or things that aren't related to recovery. So when this happens, especially staff that don't have a lot of experience are like, well, what do I do here? I mean, I just learned that this is a really good way to do it, but I have to write it down this way. So that's one reason that we have what we call these tools. Another is to guide a recovery process. So I've asked Chris to come back today, and he's going to go through a whole long list of tools that have been developed over a period of, I'm going to say 15 years even. Well, probably 20 years, because when we first started, we needed ways of reinforcing the recovery mentality. So we would say, the form would ask you to fill things out in a way or talk to a person in a way that was recovery oriented. And pretty soon that process became embedded in the culture. So it wasn't just the form that was happening out there, but the form helped kind of nail it down. And also you'll notice in some of these tools, there's explicit ways of talking to people, using the tool in a way of talking to people. I talked a little bit about this last week when we talked about the self-directed recovery plan. We're going to talk about that again today. So that's what we're up to today. That's what we mean by tools. And you can get all these tools from us, or you can take our ideas and make your own tools. There's a lot to be said for making your own tools. So, because then you've kind of got your own buy-in and your own ownership and your own commitment to what you're doing. But we're happy to have you use our stuff too. So with no more to do, let me see if I can bring Chris in. I'm not real good at this, but I think I can do it. Okay, here we go. Chris, thank you for being with us again. Lovely to see you as always. And I've been telling folks that you're going to walk us through a number of tools that have been developed over the years. Where would you like to start?
Well, actually, Lori, we've done a lot of these together, and I think a really good starting place, maybe we could start with the leadership tools first. And one I'd love you to talk about, maybe a really good way to open, because it seems like it's foundational to a lot of our work that we do. You developed this wonderful tool that has a dual purpose for leadership and also a tool that peer support specialists can use with people they serve. And you call it the resilience conversation.
Well, yes. Yeah, I did. That was a long time ago. And I developed it because I realized that whether you were a professionally trained person or you were, well, peers are professionally trained too, regardless of your role, often people didn't know how to talk to other folks in a recovery kind of way. They were used to talking to people, even talking with people, but not in a way that brought forward a recovery response. Mm-hmm. So this tool It's just a simple way of beginning with strengths and focusing on that, looking at things that get in the way of where the person wants to go, focusing then on where the person wants to go, and then looking at what they both need to do to get there. And that worked so well that we adopted it for supervisors talking to their staff. So it started with a conversation with the people we serve, and then we added a couple other levels to it. One was supervisors talking to their staff in a way that promoted recovery.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was kind of foundational to a lot of things.
It was, Laura. I love that tool, and I can hear you talk about it a long time. In fact, I can remember way back when we worked in an organization where we had integrated clinical staff with peer support specialists. And what happened was the peer support specialists were working with people in a very empowering way. And some of the clinical staff had their own different ways of working with people. So you brought all the staff together in the town hall and talked about a new way of working with people where we could all be on the same page. And it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful story to how you developed this tool, which is foundational to a lot of the things we do now.
Well, like a lot of tools, it was developed from a position of desperation. Like, how can we help people make this shift in a way that feels good to them and that works? So, yeah,
From desperation to inspiration.
yes.
So, Lori, I'd like to share another tool that kind of relates because it's about moving ourselves forward in a recovery resilient way. And this is one of the tools that we have in our recovery practices for leaders course. And it's a preparation tool before people even come to the course. We provide something called the 180 Recovery Resilience Leadership Survey.
Hmm.
And this is a survey monkey tool where the staff members, the direct reports of the leader coming to the workshop, will confidentially appraise their leader based on the leader's recovery resilient leadership skills. And then when the leader comes to the class, they get a kind of an overview of what their staff are seeing about them.
Hmm.
And they let that inform them in a way to help them themselves grow in their professional leadership skills.
And that's a tool that takes a lot of courage.
It
Um,
does.
I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Who knows more about your strengths and your challenges than the people who work for you? Because they're subject to them all day long.
True.
We just ask them, what am I doing great? What could I do better? And that's kind of what the 180 does, is it gives people that kind of feedback. And it's all anonymous, so there's no retribution involved, but it's just a great tool.
And Lori, speaking of professional development, I'd like you to share a little bit about the next one because you really developed it. Something called we call the professional employee resilience plan, or PrEP for short. Could you explain to folks what that tool's all about?
The story with this one is um, we had people going to our crisis clinic that weren't talking to people or weren't being engaged. And they were people that came back frequently. And the basically our funding source says, we want you to use this particular way of being with them. And it just hurt my heart to think that we would be that way. And it's not bad. It's a generally accepted way of treatment, but it wasn't strength based and it wasn't engaging and it was kind of blaming. It was like, how'd you get this way? What did you do? It was sort of like that. And now what are you going to do about it? And I just like kind of sort of came unglued around it. And so I said to the crisis clinic, okay, when these folks come in again, I want you to call me no matter what time of the day or night. I'm going to come over and talk to them. And I did end up going over there in the middle of the night a couple times. And it was this tool where I just started with an engagement process. Like, what are your strengths? What are you good at? I find you have to ask it two or three ways to get people to talk about their strengths, because it's not something on the tip of their tongue. So kind of coach the strengths out, and then looked at what might get in the way of them using those strengths. And this is where they would talk about things that we might call symptoms or challenges or whatever, addictions, whatever. So they talk about that. And then we talk about, well, what's our plan for moving past this? What's your plan? And what are you going to do? And what can I do to help? And so that's kind of where it came from. It's just a real rudimentary tool for engaging people from a position of strength.
Yeah,
And then
and
finding out what they want to do about moving past it, moving past their challenges.
yeah.
So that worked so well that we then adapted it for our employees. Like, what are your strengths? What are your challenges? What's your plan for moving past this? What can we do to help you move past? So I think we may have reused that tool several different ways in different
Well, and
venues.
it was very innovative here because really it's about what you did with this tool is you put the employee in charge of their own performance development plan,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So they really author their own development path. That's what I love
yes,
about
yes. Well, of course, the supervisor's there pointing out things that, I mean, we all have blind spots. So kind of revealing blind spots, like what about this? What about that? In a kind of way. So working together, instead of it just being the supervisor saying, here's what I want you to do, here's what's wrong with you. It's here's what you need to fix. Again, if the whoever we are, this is a human being thing. If we can pull that up from ourselves, we own it. If we don't own it, we're just dragging ourselves through somebody else's ideas, which doesn't work very well. So I think that's the basic concept, is coming from a place where either the person being served or the employee can own what's going on, accept some blind spot coaching, and then move progressively toward a more productive position.
I love that. And Lori, it aligns so much with what you used to say a lot about how oftentimes in organizations, the performance evaluation conversation with the supervisor to the employee is often kind of gets reduced to here, sign your review and get it back
Yeah,
to me. Rather than the
sign your performance evaluation
yeah,
instead
rather
of
than the
using it
conversation.
as a real opportunity for coaching and supporting.
Yeah. And so a wonderful tool that you developed that goes with this prep is something you call the resilient performance wheel. I showed it with the dean of a community college who worked with a lot of students in their academic professional goals, and
Yeah.
he said the tool itself was brilliant. He started to use it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and if you remember, you took the circle and you used like five. For some reason, five is a number that people can kind of grasp.
Well,
And you
I don't think five was magic. Uh,
okay,
it's like if you slice a pie,
yeah,
but all the slices aren't equal, and each slice represents what is contained in the job description or the duty statement, however you want to call it.
like teamwork,
Teamwork,
documentation.
yeah, teamwork might be fatter than documentation, and there's depending on the job, there's five, it could be more. Five, I wouldn't get too crazy about too many slices. But when you do that, then you can see exactly what you want the person to do and how much time you want them to spend on it. So we don't want you to spend 60% of your time doing paperwork. And we don't want you to spend 80% of your time doing whatever else. It's a good balance of things.
Yeah.
The whole idea being that you are in a position to productively engage the person being served.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about it is the so the employee, you have the employee actually take a highlighter, because it radiated from the center was 0 to the very outside of the circle is 100%. And
Yeah.
the employee would highlight where they thought they were at each area. And the supervisor would do that, where they would come together and they would compare, and it
Yeah.
created like a mutual conversation about where
Yes. Yes.
really.
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful tool that helps people in a concrete way understand what's expected of them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where they are.
And then, then the performance evaluation is based on that. You have some real, something real to talk about. You're not just checking boxes or filling in little blanks on a performance evaluation.
True.
Yeah,
I love that plan. I love
I
that.
do too. Yeah, that's a good one.
So, Laura, I'm going to talk real quickly about two other leadership tools we have.
Okay.
One is something that is near to your heart because you often talk about how sometimes we go to workshops and classes and we don't take action. So, in the Recovery Practices for Leaders workshop, we have something called the Recovery Leadership Action Plan. And
Yeah.
that's where, after going through that 2-day workshop, and they do a lot of introspection from themselves and what their team shares, and being introduced to a lot of deeper recovery leadership principles, they come together and they put together a plan for transforming, in many ways, how they're doing things, and maybe sometimes even their own team and department and organization. So really love the action plan that we have.
Well, and this is something that we used to call it the Monday morning plan, because
Yeah.
trainings would usually end on a Friday and people would come back to work on Monday after a weekend. And then it's like they've got all this stuff stacked up from when they weren't there because they were at training. And then it gets to be Wednesday before they clear that away. And then they forget what they learned in the training. So it was a way to kind of ground the training. So before they even leave the training, they make a plan for how they're going to put what they learned into action.
Love that.
Yeah.
The other one I want to share with folks is something I developed called the Resilient Culture Playbook. And basically put this together because a lot of times in organizations, a team will have a meeting and maybe they'll start right at the workplace about the work goals and all the topics that are taking place. And sometimes they forget that what we're really here about, and that is our recovery, resilient relationships with each other and the intentional work that we're doing. So these are like 100 topics around resilient topics like teamwork, avoiding gossip, diversity, and so forth. So the leader reads a couple paragraphs. They have a team huddle, kind of like you see in the Walmart or Home Depot team huddles.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the supervisor will assign a play option for the staff to carry out to the field, maybe ask a question related to that topic to the people being served. Then they'll come back to the next huddle, share what they came up with, and they'll do a new huddle. So it's a way to kind of diffuse intentionally what we're doing here and the work that we do with people we serve in
Yeah.
resilience
That's
recovery.
a good one. That's a good one.
And speaking of this dialogue that takes place, Laura, I'd love for you to share another leadership tool that you developed called the Giving and Receiving Resilient Feedback Guidelines. Could you share?
Oh gosh. There's another place where we realized that people didn't have a recovery, let's see how to say this. Knowing how to have a tough conversation in a recovery strength-based way. So I put this together, and it's just starts with getting permission. Can I bring this up to you? It's all about starting with strengths. Here's what I really like about you, or here's what you're doing really well, and then moves on to here's something that I don't really understand about what's happening. And the whole intent of this is to bring the persons closer to you, not further away. So it's not a confrontational, I'm pushing you away because I don't like you. It's I'm moving something that's in between us out of the way so we can have a better connection. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, you actually develop the two sides of that, how to give resilient feedback and
Yeah,
also
yeah.
how we can receive it. I think
Yes,
it
yes.
helps us grow.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that too, isn't there?
Yeah. And for leaders, that really is an important skill to have, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and once you practice it a little bit, it kind of becomes part of the culture.
Yeah.
Like it gets embedded. It's like, oh, this is the way we talk to each other. It's not a form you pull out every once in a while and read to each other. It just becomes a practice.
Yeah. And like you say often, Lori, that the leaders replicate or what this very same skills they use with their staff, their direct report, the people, their direct reports will ideally replicate with the people they serve.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, that's the idea.
Another relationship tool that I think, Lori, we included in our peer support learning for the 21st century, and we also have in a couple of other workshops, is something called 8 Steps to Reconciliation.
Mm,
And that is when a relationship gets fractured, right? And because we know uh, recovery and healing happen through relationship, and that also includes the relationships that staff have with each other,
mhm.
then things go awry. So we put together a process called 8 Steps to Reconciliation on how do we get to this place where we can no longer focus on the blame, but focus on what we can agree with and come together.
Mhm.
And so it's a really good process that tool that folks can use, and they can also use it with people they serve.
And I remember we did this because we first started talking about conflict resolution, and we realized that what we wanted was beyond a resolution.
Yes.
It wasn't just about agreeing on solving a problem, it was about reconciling a relationship.
Yeah, yeah. Not fixing the blame, but fixing the relationship, right?
Yeah.
So, Lori, one of the other things that one of the other skills that's involved in reconciliation is that people are willing to be able to see other viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in our leadership workshop, Recovery Practices for Leaders, we provide folks with a number of questions. We call them getting a viewing point. Uh,
Yeah. And instead of a point of view, it's a viewing point.
yes. And so these getting a viewing point questions can actually help two team members who are in conflict with each other kind of see it from the other person's viewpoint.
Yeah.
And a leader can often use these when there's staff conflict. And then, of course, staff can use this with the people they serve and their relationships. Last leadership tool I'd like to mention to folks, Lori, is something we do um, called the resilience release key cards, right?
Uh-huh.
So when a team works together, whether it's a community-based setting or maybe it's a psychiatric or crisis setting, oftentimes the staff can go home with heavy hearts based on what they've experienced, the trauma that people are experiencing they're working with. So this is a way to help a leader actually debrief with the team in a way that's recovery oriented. And
Mm-hmm.
so folks can process that and they can go home not carrying all this stuff, this weight on their hearts about what happened during the day.
Yeah.
And so it kind of goes through the process. There's a quote, and then there's a question about where they share hope and gratitude, and they also share about anything that happened that day that was either good or bad. And then they also, if they share something difficult, they also will share something that was lighthearted.
Yeah.
And then there's a close, and we're also going to put this on an app. Right now, it's on a keyring card. So it's a debrief process, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I would call it, a debrief process. And this is something that this is a time of day when this kind of mindfulness doesn't usually happen because people just want to go home.
It's
It's like,
true.
let me go. But just a few, I don't know, this probably takes 3 to 5 minutes, I would
Yes.
say. And it's just, let's go home with some perspective here.
Oh, I like that.
Let's
Yeah,
not take everything we did today home with us. Yeah.
I like that. Awesome.
Okay. I think that's the end of our leadership tools, right?
Yeah, we're going to go to the peer support tools.
Well, my favorite one was the self-directed recovery plan. And I mentioned this last week in detail, so I won't carry on too much. But it's a way of basically what it does is it takes the treatment plan and it rewords it in first person. So the person whose plan it is fills it out themselves with the help of a peer. And then they have the treatment plan in their own words from their own heart. It's not just something that someone tells them. It's not a plan someone else makes. And we all know that if you make your own plan, you're much more likely to do it than if someone makes it for you and expects you to do it. So that's kind of how that one works. And then, of course, it gives the peer something explicit to do. So because this is sometimes a problem in like case management sites in particular, where peers get one assignment and then they don't get the next assignment, or they get the wrong assignment. So this gives them something to do that's directly related to peer support. And it helps the case manager a lot because the plan is pretty much done. The case manager then can add their advanced skills to this and take it to the next level. So, and we've used this with a lot of success over the years. It's been a good little plan. So,
Another tool I developed, Lori, that kind of relates to this is something called the Anchor and Resilience Plan. And basically, I developed this as a result of something that happened in Singapore. One of the students went through a difficult situation, plural students. And so this particular plan is something to help a person get through a really intense moment of grief or crisis in their life and
oh,
how
yes.
anchor themselves in resilience and move
I
forward.
remember this. Yeah. Very effective tool.
Yeah. And Lori, this one, like all the other ones we're mentioning, most all the other ones, we also have these in electronic version. So it's not only on paper, but we have this on where people can do online fillable.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I forgot about that.
Lori, I'd like you to talk to folks about the next tool that peer support specialists can use with people they serve, something you kind of conceptualized called the recovery discharge plan. Could you speak about that one?
Yes, this is just kind of self-explanatory in a way. And we use this a lot with people who were being discharged from crisis programs. But you can use it for being discharged from anything. I really don't even like the word discharge, but I'll just use it because we all know what we're talking about. And again, it's just the person describes what they need, when they need it, who can help them when they leave the program. And the peer works right along with them with this. Peers are
Yeah.
so good at this tool because they've been there. You know, they know the nuances of this and they know the questions to ask. So it's like it's you've heard me say this so many times, Chris. Points of transition are so critical
Yeah.
in our work, and we don't pay enough attention to them. Moving from one program to the next, being discharged from a program, anytime there's a transition, we have to pay really close attention because people are so vulnerable during. I mean, we're all vulnerable during a transition.
Yeah.
There's like, who are we now that we're going to be in a different place? How can we be? What are the rules? Um, who's coming with me? Am I by myself? Who's going to be there to catch me? So yeah, this is a great tool for transitions.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what I love about it, the peer support specialist actually empowers the person to take charge of their discharge, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
It's really wonderful.
Again, it's the ownership thing.
Yes,
Well, Chris, that's a lot of tools.
it is. I feel like we went to the Black and Decker shop. We really covered quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and describing all those tools. Really appreciate it, and appreciate you so much, Chris. Thank you so much.
Totally welcome, Lori.
Take care. Well, folks, there you have it. A whole bunch of tools. I hope you found this helpful. Tools have been such a key player in the work that we've done, for all the reasons that we talked about. So, hope this helped. Next week, we have a special guest coming, Edie Schwartz. If you don't know Edie, you soon will. And I know you're going to love her. She's an amazing woman with a long history of advocacy, consulting, managing, and just making mental health programs work really well for people. And she's going to build a really nice bridge between the talk we've had on culture and the talks we're going to have on leadership. She'll explain her experience to us in a way that really shows us how those two things come together. So, looking forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Have a good week. Bye-bye.